This is um, this is a response, more or less, to an email that I would like to send MrRepzion, Daniel. I've watched, many of your videos. I think are great. Um, I love just to hear your opinion on matters, and I think that you take a certain topic and you really look at it from a very neutral perspective. You have your beliefs, but I think that I think you look at it from the right perspective, you know, uh, and I think a lot of people can relate with you. I think a lot of people can agree with you on a lot of topics. And I think that you take a lot of topics that would be sensitive. A lot of them involve very hard, you know, very hard topics like abuse, rape, a lot of ways, women's struggles. I've been really fascinated with a lot of those videos, and then some of the videos are just sort of random, and they can be a little bit funny and whatnot, and maybe a little bit of a breath of fresh air. But this is just a audio response to the email I'm sending you. Whether or not you think this is a good topic or not, that remains to be seen. But it's something I'm very passionate about. My name is Louis Schwartz. I'm a musician and an artist. I have spent countless hours writing music. Sorry about that. Ran out of memory. What was I saying? Spent countless hours writing music on topics that I'm very passionate about. Some of those things are your usual musician sort of, the girl that did me wrong, or how I did the girl wrong, or whatever. But a lot of them are really good topics. I discussed a few of them in my last record, especially in the introduction. I discussed weather, meteorology, tornadoes, an improving tornado warning system. I haven't really discussed Lyme disease very much, but it is a big topic that I'm passionate about. Trying to develop, a better system for that, because that's just a complete mess, with people struggling with Lyme disease and just not getting the help that they need, or the financial support through insurances, and the insurances, basically within checks and balances with the CDC. The whole thing's a mess. But that's not what I'm going to discuss today. Today is July 2nd, 2013, and it is a very special day for me. And if you know anything about the model Ruslana Korshunova, then you also know it's a very special day. It's her birthday. She would have been 26 today. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Had the day off. I didn't get any sleep. I spent the entire night sort of formulating what I wanted to say here, and it was an emotional night. Just like the 28th is very emotional. It's it's just a couple days ago, so, it's just been a rough week with that. But I didn't want to do it on the 28th because I just don't think I could have gotten through it. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get through it today, but we'll try our best here. But anyway, what I would like to discuss is basically this organization called LifeSpring and Rose of the World. But we'll start from the beginning here. So this is the email that I'm sending Daniel. We touched up on my name and all that jazz. I've always respected your videos and your opinions, especially on videos of sensitive nature and especially on those of women's struggles, whether self-image, respect in society, you name it. Today is Ruslana's birthday. I wrestled with the thought of sending you this email, but I believe this is important and I'm very passionate about this girl's life, much like you're passionate about the topics you discuss in your videos. My music and art revolves around Ruslana, and I miss her very much. I found out about Ruslana at 3:30 p.m. on June 28, 2008, 1 hour after her death. I can't really express how distraught I was when I read the news about her death. In fact, I sort of read it once, just sort of, in a daze, and then read it again, and then proceeded to literally cry like a baby. So since that day, I have never really forgotten about Ruslana. In fact, she was quoted as saying, I am here for anybody, whether she meant her friends or anybody who may have needed her, her assistance or her love or caring, who is there for me? And I think that I can officially say that I have been there for her ever since her death, every day, nonstop. So hopefully she can see that, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that she's not forgotten. The topic of interest here is a cult-like organization called LifeSpring and Rose of the World. They began in America in the mid-1970s and eventually had to leave America because of the amount of racking lawsuits against them for the psychological impact that they had on those who attended the courses there. This was often with fatal results, so you can imagine, something like that. Sorry, I'm having my coffee in the morning. I'm having coffee and I'm eating some cookies because I'm sad and I'm allowed to eat cookies. And smoke cigarettes. Rose of the World now has roots in Russia and Ukraine, among other locations. Both Ruslana and her friend Anastasia Drozdova attended courses at Rose of the World. It was a $1,000 3-day course. Anastasia attended multiple times. I'm not sure how many times Ruslana attended, but the course basically, in a nutshell, involves, you go in to take this course, and you're put in with a number of other people. It's very dark. There's like an announcer who's speaking very quickly. you can imagine from the viewpoint of someone who maybe, is fluent in a certain language. This announcer is screaming, he's talking, too quickly to be understood, and it's just a 3-day course of barraging, getting screamed at, and being forced by the organization leaders to rip open scars of past abuse, whether that was physical abuse, psychological abuse, rape, and any other form of psychological impact that they might have gone through. For example, with Ruslana, I know she touched up on her father's death and her failed romances. So, it really, anything that could have been used as sort of like a weapon, back on the attendee, that they were not necessarily encouraged to speak about it. They were forced to speak about it. This wasn't, like a happy-go-lucky stay, in a nice little peaceful environment. Like I told Daniel, this wasn't a stay in the Bahamas. This had horrible repercussions. Friends of the two women reported changes in their behavior after several months at the Rose. So, I have to assume that Ruslana went more than once. I don't really know. I'm still getting, new information every day. I find out more and more about her. Even when I think I know a lot, I really don't. I know very little about Ruslana, and even much less about Anastasia, unfortunately. I don't even know when Anastasia was born. So, that's very sad for me, because I would love to know more about Anastasia. So, in a side note, if anyone knows more about Anastasia Drozdova, I would love to know more about her, and I would thank you if you could provide me with more information. That would be great. Anyway, changes in the behavior after several months at the Rose. Korshunova became aggressive, began cursing, while Drozdova experienced violent mood swings and grew reclusive. Both lost weight, which I can imagine would be a very common thing with women who would attend something like this. After 3 months of training, Korshunova returned to New York to look for work, where she wrote of feeling lost and doubting herself. She had undergone a nasty breakup with a Russian tycoon. She was more or less obsessed with this guy. He was a complete douche nozzle, and he was already married, and was just sneaking behind his wife's back with Ruslana. And this poor girl, fell in love with him, and he refused her to be with his wife, which, I can't say that, if you were put in this position, that what he did was wrong, but all I'm saying is that the whole thing was unacceptable to begin with. He shouldn't have even been messing with Ruslana. Anyway, so on top of that, she was under fire from Russian-based prostitution rings within New York City who wouldn't leave her alone. How deep that goes, I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to know, but I don't know if they just were that they couldn't get her. They were trying to get her too, on top of all the other models that they were, fucking with. I don't know, but that's another variable that comes into play that I read about. So her job, being a model now, was a health liability, and that was leaving her more than exhausted of the business that only years before had sought her talent in the first place and put her where she stood, in New York City, in her new apartment on Water Street. In fact, Ruslana was discovered in 2003 by a woman named Debbie Jones from All Asia magazine. She discovered Ruslana more or less in like a lineup. I guess they would get like photos of a bunch of possible models that they could use for whatever, for maybe their corporation or whatever. These were just pretty faces, not necessarily any brains attached to that or anything like that. They don't. I don't know what they would really analyze in terms of each model. I think it was more or less a name, a location, and what they look like. So that's sort of fucked up too. But I really don't know how what's involved there. But there was Ruslana in a lineup with her long, beautiful chestnut hair that went down to her knees. And basically, Debbie said, who's this girl? This girl, has it, And she got on a plane and went out to Kazakhstan and attempted to find the model. And of course, she did. Long story short, here we are now. A few weeks before her death, Ruslana was in good spirits. And even discussed possibly leaving the modeling business to attend college. She told her mother this, Valentina. I believe that's is that Kutenkova? I'm not really sure. I'm gonna have another cookie. I like to talk so much, my coffee's gonna get cold. Sorry. One friend stated Ruslana had returned from a modeling gig in Paris, seemingly on top of the world, So what I'm gathering from this is, she really doesn't know what she's going to do. She has all this pressure from all this bullshit, with this guy, and then this dark, foreboding sort of thing going on with this this prostitution ring, but she's also still having good gigs. She's still getting paid well. I think she was financially she was a little bit a little bit more in trouble than I think when she first started, but I still think that she was doing quite well. So anyway, on June 27th, and just in a side note, she met with Eric Madigan Heck, where they did a photo shoot on the rooftop of a New York building. I know this vividly because I wrote a song called Rouletka off the record of the same name, and found out, after I wrote the song and I discovered this video of her. Basically, Eric had taken photos of her, but in between the photo shoots, he would take this grainy 8mm footage of Ruslana, and more or less said that he caught her when she was off guard, when she was free. So you have these last photos of her, but you also have this grainy 8mm footage. And I discovered this, a month or two after I wrote the song, and during the mastering and the final mixing of the song, realized, holy fuck, the video syncs to my song. That's just a little weird anyway, but that's neither here nor there. I just know from a fact that this video was taken on June 27th, so for the day in itself, that did occur earlier in the afternoon. Later that night, she met with her ex-boyfriend Artem. Perkinok? In the evening, where they watched the movie Ghost. The movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore together. We know that Ruslana was complaining of a stomachache throughout the evening and then into the next day. Artem dropped the model off later in the morning of the 28th, I think at around 4:45 a.m. Still upbeat. She was still upbeat to celebrate her 21st birthday, which was in 4 days, which would have been today, obviously, 5 years ago. She was going to spend that with him in Pennsylvania. At the same time, she was dating a new guy named Mark, what was his last name? I have it written down here. It's just not quite. Mark somebody or another. I'm sure I'll bump into it here. I have all this written down, but it shows how prepared I am right now. I'm a mess. Anyway, this Mark guy, she was with him, still talking to Artem, you know what I mean? The whole thing is just, a mess. But anyway, he drops her off early in the morning, and I assume she went to sleep. I'm not sure. But the next set of hours are quite hazy. We don't know much about what happened in the next set of hours. In fact, there's a lot of theories, conspiracies. Not gonna say conspiracy theories. We're not gonna go there. It wasn't the whatever the fuck that the. I never remember what I'm trying to say when I want to say it, But anyway, I'm not worried about that. That's neither here nor there. We're not going to talk about conspiracy theories anyway. But what follows here is basically my account of what happened. This is not really what probably happened. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't there with her. I didn't know her. I have people who come up to me all the time, and they see my artwork and they my music, and they ask me if I knew her personally, and I'm always honest, and I tell them no, I didn't know her. I found out about her an hour later, after her death, and these people just abandoned me. They don't care about me. All they want to know is was she down that day? What was going on? They want to know, if she was murdered or if she committed suicide. And it's just like that's sick. That's morbid, and I don't have the answer to that, nor does that matter. What matters here is that a beautiful young girl, a very talented young girl, died. And she's not the first one to fall prey to one of these organizations, like Rose of the World. If they got kicked out of America for the amount of lawsuits, you can imagine that there is a lot of people, psychologically affected by these people, and on top of any other group out there that is similar to something like Rose of the World. And who knows how many people fatally killed themselves from this. I don't even want to begin to imagine. And these people just keep on trucking like, it's nothing, or keep on creating excuses, putting the blame on the person who killed themselves, saying, they couldn't be saved, this and that, you know what I mean? They were a rollback, as they put it when describing Ruslana. If you don't know what a rollback is, in layman's terms, a rollback is somebody who exhibits signs of basically a relapse in behavior. They may be sort of bipolar or whatever, but they go from more or less stable relapsing into a very dangerous psychological condition that oftentimes ends up being fatal. But it's a bullshit term. Okay, a rollback at best is somebody who could be emotionally unstable at times, but that means that they require certain therapy. Maybe they require certain medicines. I don't know. I'm not somebody who necessarily believes that medicine is always the answer now. I've come a long way, and I just think that counseling and therapy is always key, but it really depends on the person. But they shouldn't be just handling things on their own, because obviously it can spin out of control, and in a lot of ways, twofold, they can fall prey to something like this, like with these organizations. So here we are. We're going to basically cover the final moments of Ruslana's life, and then we're going to wrap up from there. Basically, where I'm going with this. So, what follows is the grim Louis Schwartz account of the final moments of this beautiful beating heart that left us cold in our tracks on this hot summer day of June 28, 2008. She most likely went into her bathroom and hastily snipped the ends of her hair, which were already much shorter than they were the day she was discovered and nicknamed the Russian Rapunzel of Kazakhstan. Her hair had consecutively gotten shorter through the years, at the dismay of colleagues who remembered the young, vibrant model and her hair that had earned her that name. A sign that Ruslana was maturing, for better or for worse. But now the ends were uneven and split in many ways. Ruslana then took her shoes off. She was wearing pajamas, walked out on the balcony of her 9th-story apartment with the scissors she had just used, and looked over Manhattan. Ruslana was afraid of heights and rarely walked out there. Next door, the unfinished Holiday Inn sat vacant on that sunny Saturday New York afternoon as workers enjoyed a day off with their children and wives at home. Ruslana climbed onto the right balcony railing, cut a square in the screen that hung blowing in the wind off the side of the Holiday Inn, placed there to prevent those in the apartment complex from accessing the unfinished site, a dangerous open-air structure that would have appeared like an exoskeleton of a layered cake in the summer of 2008. Traversing the narrow gap between her apartment and the Holiday Inn, she climbed through the square hole in the screen she had cut and managed to access the unfinished 9th-story level of this construction plane. She most likely walked softly up to the edge of this platform, which did not have a screen hanging from the outer face of the building, and looked down at the hustle and bustle of Water Street. Visitors, workers, and tourists scrambling around to catch the subway back to wherever they came from. Busy stockbrokers talking on cell phones, trying to make desperate sales in the tense atmosphere of the failing American economy, oblivious that a young 20-year-old girl was watching them curiously from the ledge of the Holiday Inn, making her last transaction on life. 2:20 p.m. Ruslana waited, perhaps for the right moment, perhaps for a clearing in vehicular and pedestrian traffic. My alarm's going off, sorry. Promised I wouldn't cry, and I'm already crying. And my alarm went off. that went back, where were we at? Perhaps for a clearing of vehicular and pedestrian traffic that went back and forth in a random display of complacent variables that would decide her fate more than her own decision to take her own life. 2:24 p.m. The sun beat down hard. A trickle of sweat affectionately rolled down Ruslana's brow as she became impatient for a good clearing. Her breathing became heavy, her glances back and forth more erratic. She clenched her fists and watched a pigeon take off from the opposing building across the street. She had always wanted to fly, to spread her wings and soar. 2:25 p.m. Just when there didn't seem to be any break in the traffic, the light at Pine Street turned red, stopping a set of impatient cars, which were forced to come to a halt. They would also be forced to watch an utter tragedy unfold before their eyes. Meanwhile, her eyes were drawn to Water Street Plaza and the sculpture she rarely looked at, leaving her apartment so many times before. She would look at this metallic sculpture, she decided, on her way down. It would be the last thing she looked at. One final glance back to her right revealed just the space she needed to do this. An oncoming FedEx truck was slowing down to round the corner of Wall Street to pull behind the FedEx office onto Front Street, located by the Verizon store. With two cars behind it, most likely grumbling at the weight of yet another slow truck holding them up from getting to the bridge, lunch was over and they had to get back to their job. The loud talking of a couple who just exited the Water Street Cafe below Ruslana briefly awoke her from her inhibitions. He held her close as they bounced ideas back and forth as to where to go next on their Saturday trip to the city, and kissed her on the cheek. Anger set in as she remembered how Artem and her split, and how her current flame, and here's the name I couldn't remember, Mark Kaminsky, a man more interested in his position over Artem, wasn't any better. She only had just gotten over the Russian tycoon, the man she truly wanted, the man that had broken her heart. Veiled romance followed her like irony. Why couldn't she be loved? To be loved. Why was she damaged? I'm so lost, she thought to herself as her eyes burned at the girl with envy. She hastily turned her back to the perfect conditions unfolding. 2:26 p.m. It took 1 minute for Ruslana to walk from the edge of the building, the edge of the Holiday Inn, back to the corner of it, where all the circuitry would be installed, most likely months down the road. She felt like this building, disassembled and unfinished, a work that would never be finished. She thought of that pigeon soaring in the sky overhead. Why couldn't she fly? Why couldn't she spread her wings and fly over New York City? She would fly home, she thought. Home to Albany. 2:27 p.m. Sweating, Ruslana didn't hesitate. There is no hesitation in death, only action. Her heart was beating so fast. It would beat like that only for a minute. Perhaps it was 20 beats, perhaps 30. With her back to the wall, Ruslana took off, her golden hair whipping behind her as she picked up speed. She ran like a sprinter. She ran without fear. She ran for her life. 2:28 p.m. The FedEx truck was finally out of the way,
and the cars behind it only had enough time to touch their accelerator when something sheening in the sky caught their eye. The same for the cars waiting at the light at Pine Street, which had just turned from red to green, and then Water Street turned red, a blood red. No one saw Ruslana jump. Ruslana cleared the platform with such speed as she flew. Briefly, she soared. She may have even thought she would fly for a second as she watched the shiny sculpture on her way down. There would be no regret, no time for regret. Those around Water Street Cafe, including the instigating couple walking away, heard the sound of a loud thump. Something that sounded like a car collision, like someone being hit by a car. 2:29 p.m. Both of Ruslana's arms broke immediately on contact. She slipped into unconsciousness within milliseconds, followed by death only seconds later. Pedestrians were aghast at the poor lifeless body laying in a pitiful pile 28 feet from where she cleared the building. 2:30 to 3 p.m. Cops were quickly at the scene, using a tarp and cans of paint to cover up the broken, lifeless body of Ruslana. There was no more broken than it had been only minutes before, but it was alive and responsive. Thus would begin a not so very thorough investigation for the reason of death. Murder was immediately ruled out. Murder. It wouldn't have taken someone to push Ruslana off the edge and murder her. For them to get her to run at will. No suicide note was found. No drugs were found in her system. Only confusion and a loss for an explanation. Miles across the sea, Anastasia Drozdova would fall to her knees as news of her best friend's death was exploited by Fox News and the unforgivable crack journalism of Geraldo Rivera, who greeted the shaken Artem with a microphone to the face. Artem should have greeted Geraldo with his fists. One year later, no one would hear of Drozdova's heroic jump off a block of flats in Kyiv, Ukraine, putting an end to another shining life of so much potential. What is it that a group like Rose of the World can still be in existence today, doing the same things that they did in the 70s, the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now? It affects so many people, including these two, with such fatal consequences. How is that allowed? Why is that still allowed? I believe it is up to the person who is seeking relief, support for whatever they're going through, to be just as careful when trusting something like Rose of the World to provide any sort of therapy if you want to call this therapy. I don't know what you would call this, but because once these two women had joined this organization, it was too late. It is said by certain individuals from this organization that the therapy that they provide is like a drug. These women, and anyone for that matter who goes to these organizations, go for the high of, you know, this barrage of emotions and people screaming at them and them ripping their heart and soul out in a very damaging way. It creates this sort of high that when the classes and the therapy are over, they come back to an empty apartment or an empty relationship or an empty job that's not quite as good as Rose of the World, and therefore fall prey to a rollback, as we would call it, and then the results may vary. I don't believe that that is what Rose of the World provides. I believe that they terrorize people. Some people have spent many years putting behind them any sort of abuse that they may have buried, and I'm not saying that this is okay or this is healthy for them. It's just the way it goes sometimes. And then other people have gone through a lot of therapy to somehow get through their day with the thought of what they have been through always in the back of their head, never quite far. It's never forgotten, obviously. I mean, I haven't forgotten about Ruslana since June 28th, 2008. I think about her every day, all day. So why would you forget about something, is personal and sorry, as personal and as I guess I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but you don't forget about it, okay? And it's up to you to find the correct help and therapy and whatever you may need through experts who know what they're doing, who can provide you with counseling and therapy and whatnot, and not scream at you and barrage you with all of this crazy shit, and then call that therapy. That this blitzkrieg type of therapy, that is not, that's not therapy. I don't even know why I'm calling it therapy. It's not therapy. But some people will live their life in fear.
fear around every corner that something is going to happen to them again. And many will never go seek counseling or help or whatnot. That's not for me to say, that's right or wrong. That's not for me to be in their shoes. I'm not in their shoes. I didn't go through what they went through. I've had my own experience, being assaulted in the streets of Wilmington. In that event, I blew off, and acted like that wasn't a big deal, but it was. I think that, I still think about that every day, and there's still, I think, a part of me who gets a little nervous at night when I'm walking anywhere, and it has nothing to do with the color of the skin of the person who may be, out and about too, but it more or less is just, I just don't feel like I can trust anybody. So, it's not something that I've ever forgotten about. As much as I would like to say that it wasn't a huge deal, it was. So, to wrap all this up, Daniel, I would like for you to take a look at all of this, and I would be curious at your take on something like this. How do you feel about something like this? What's your thoughts on this matter? Because at the end of the day, it is clear that this organization, among other organizations that were any similar to it, has affected so many people, and none of those effects have been positive effects, and many of them have been very fatal effects. We now do not have two incredible models, incredible people, extremely talented, extremely beautiful, extremely smart individuals. They are no longer with us. They will grace the magazines of the past. And to once again quote Ruslana, I am here for anybody who needs me. Who is here for me? Who is there for her? And anybody else, for that matter. Somebody has to be, because I don't think anybody really was there for her on that day. As much as she had family, as much as she had friends, and a boyfriend, and an ex-boyfriend, and a tycoon, millionaire, whatever, she didn't go to anybody. She didn't go to her friends, and that's not their fault, That's not their fault. It's not like they could have really known. A girl who is in high spirits just turns around and jumps off a building. You really can't. You just can't blame yourself, and think that, I should have done something here, more or less, at the time it happened, because it was just so quick and out of the blue, and it just goes to show you how it's affected even me, somebody who didn't even know her, who knew about her an hour after her death, and how it's affected me, I can't imagine, how it's affected her family and her friends and like Artem and all these people, and it's not to put anybody down,
we need to analyze this here, and we need to do something about this Rose of the World and these cult organizations. They need to, they need to be stopped. How many more people will be hurt? How many more people will kill themselves from their crack, therapy, or whatever you want to call it. How many more unfortunate people will fall prey to this over in European countries because they're unaware of really what these organizations are about. They have these pretty candy-coated, titles, Rose of the World. They have this welcoming, sort of spirit, and then they just completely rip you apart. And the outcome may vary, and generally the outcome is not very good, at all. So I look forward to watching more of your videos, Daniel, and I can't wait to see what else you do. I'm always checking up on you, buddy. I hope you're doing okay, and I hope you're listening to this, enjoying your coffee, and I hope that you take this on. I would love to see what your opinion is on it. So, with that being said, you have a wonderful day, buddy, and anybody else who listened to this, thank you. I'm sorry for how emotional it was, but it is a very emotional topic for me, and one that I don't think I've actually sat down and discussed and taken on here. So anyway, thank you. I would encourage you to listen to some of my music, especially if you like alternative, rock or emotional rock, anything like that. I'm just a singer-songwriter. I write a lot of songs. A lot of them are very emotional, and check it out. I'm always looking for a new fan. So anyway, all right, guys, take care, and let's all wish Ruslana a happy birthday, a happy 26th birthday. Okay, and let's not forget about Anastasia as well. All right, guys, have a great day.